I never thought I'd be the guy who would find out his wife was cheating on him. I always considered myself a decent husband, or at least I tried to be. My wife, Sarah, and I had been married for 9 years. We had our ups and downs, of course, like any couple, but nothing prepared me for what was coming. It all started when my nephew Tyler began attending a new school. His teacher, Ms. Roberts, was a fresh face in the district, young, energetic, and apparently very popular among the kids and parents alike. Sarah would often pick up Tyler after school, and I'd catch her chatting with Ms. Roberts more than I liked. I thought nothing of it at first. It seemed innocent enough. But over the months, I noticed little changes in Sarah. She started taking longer to get home from her errands and began to dress differently, more revealingly, as if trying to impress someone. The first real sign something was off came when I found a series of text messages on her phone one evening when she left it unattended. I was just checking the calendar for an upcoming family event when I saw a message pop up from Robbie. I didn't think much of it until I read the texts, which were flirty and intimate. My stomach dropped. I couldn't believe it. I knew she'd been spending way too much time with that teacher. I thought they were just friends, but this felt different. Confronting her was the hardest thing I've ever done. I waited until she got home that night, my heart racing and my palms sweaty. When she walked in, I could tell she was in a good mood, singing along to some pop song that was on the radio. I shut the music off and asked her to sit down. I'll never forget the look on her face when I told her I knew about Robbie. Who? What are you talking about? She snapped, her voice defensive. It was the tone she always used when she was lying. The texts, Sarah, I saw them. You can't deny it, I said, my voice trembling. I could feel the anger boiling inside me, but I needed to remain calm. She rolled her eyes and tried to brush it off. That's just a friend. You're being ridiculous. Why would I cheat on you? We have a good life together, she insisted, but I could see the guilt in her eyes. It's not just a friend, Sarah. This isn't normal. I pressed on, feeling more and more like a fool with each word. You've been acting different. I can see it. You're lying to me. Her demeanor shifted. For a moment, she looked like a deer caught in headlights, but then she quickly regained her composure, flipping the narrative like a pro. You're being paranoid. I can't believe you would accuse me of this. Maybe you should look at yourself instead of pointing fingers. It was infuriating. She turned the whole argument around to make me feel like I was crazy for even thinking she could cheat. But deep down, I knew the truth. I was crushed. I wanted to scream at her, but instead, I felt a wave of sadness wash over me. In the days that followed, I felt completely lost. My mind was racing with thoughts of what our life had become. I went through the motions of daily life, but it was like I was living in a fog. I couldn't shake. The feeling of betrayal and the lies echoed in my head like a bad song on repeat. The emotional impact was suffocating. I had given her everything and felt utterly discarded. I spent sleepless nights thinking about my next steps. Do I confront her again? Do I seek out this Robbie? I was filled with anger and sadness, and the idea of revenge started creeping into my mind. I had to do something, but what? As I thought about it, a plan began to form. I would expose her. But not just to me or our friends. No, I wanted to make sure this would end her little affair and ruin the reputation of the woman who had shamed me. I was tired of being the victim. I wanted her to feel the consequences of her actions. This wouldn't just be about my pain. It would be about ensuring she faced the fallout for her betrayal. In my mind, there was no going back. I was determined to put my plan into action. After that confrontation, I spent every waking hour piecing together the evidence I needed for my revenge. I was driven by a mix of anger and hurt, and I found myself obsessively checking Sarah's phone when she wasn't around. I rifled through her emails, scrolled through her social media, and even kept tabs on her phone location. I knew it wasn't right, but my heart raced with each discovery. It was a twisted game of cat and mouse, and I was the predator. The more I dug, the more I found. There were messages, flirtatious exchanges, plans to meet up, pictures that should never have been sent to anyone but me. I captured screenshots of everything, saving them meticulously in a hidden folder on my phone. It felt empowering to have this evidence in my pocket. I was no longer the victim. I was the architect of my own revenge. I learned that Sarah had been spending time at a local cafe, one that she claimed was just a place to unwind after work. It was there I decided to confront Ms. Roberts, the woman who had betrayed me in the most intimate way. I knew it was risky, but I was fueled by a sense of righteousness. If Sarah thought she could get away with this, she had another thing coming. The day I decided to confront the teacher, I arrived at the cafe and spotted Sarah sitting at a corner table with Ms. Roberts. They were laughing, sharing a plate of pastries, and my blood boiled at the sight. My heart raced as I approached them, ready to unleash all my pent-up anger. "Sarah, can we talk?" I said, my voice steady but edged with an undercurrent of fury. She looked up, her eyes wide with surprise. "Oh, what are you doing here?" The casualness in her tone was infuriating, as if my presence didn't matter at all. "Now," I insisted, shooting a glare at Ms. Roberts, who was trying to hide her discomfort. I could see the color drain from Sarah's face as she realized I knew everything. "Fine," she snapped, getting up and following me outside. I turned to face her, the cool breeze feeling sharp against my heated skin. "Are you really going to pretend like I don't know about you and Robbie?" I demanded. "You think I'm stupid? You're sitting there like everything is normal while you're betraying me." She opened her mouth to speak, but I cut her off. "No more lies, I've seen your messages. I know everything." The mix of shock and anger on her face was almost satisfying. "You went through my things, you're insane." She shot back, crossing her arms defensively. "Yes, I did. You left me no choice. I trusted you and you've thrown that back in my face. Do you even care how this affects Tyler?" I said, referring to my nephew. The reality of this affair was bigger than just us. It affected family dynamics, and I was sickened by her complete disregard. "You don't know what you're talking about," she retorted, but I could see her facade cracking. I pressed forward, hungry to expose more than just her lies. "I'm not interested in your excuses anymore. You've made your choice and I'm done with you. This isn't just about us anymore, it's about your job too. You think I won't tell everyone about your little affair with a married man?" Her face paled, panic setting in. "You wouldn't dare," she hissed, but I could see the fear in her eyes. "Oh, I absolutely would," I replied, the feeling of empowerment washing over me. "You've ruined our marriage, I'll make sure you lose everything else too." That night I began crafting an email to the school board. I detailed everything, how Sarah had been engaging in a sexual affair with a teacher while caring for my nephew. I included screenshots of the messages, her own words condemning her. The more I wrote, the more clarity I found in my pain. I wasn't just seeking revenge. I was going to expose the truth. After I hit send, a wave of adrenaline coursed through me. The feeling was intoxicating. It was like I was finally taking back control of my life. I felt lighter but also anxious about the fallout. I had no idea how Sarah would react or what would happen next, but I was ready for whatever came my way. I watched the clock tick slowly, each second feeling like an eternity. The anticipation was almost unbearable. I knew I had crossed a line, but what she had done to me was unforgivable. I was the one who had been wronged, and now I was finally doing something about it. As the night dragged on, my thoughts raced. Would Sarah fight back? Would she try to manipulate the narrative in her favor? I braced myself for her reaction. I knew this wouldn't end well, but I was ready to face the consequences. I felt empowered, willing to live with the storm I had unleashed. The next morning, I woke up with a knot in my stomach. The email had been sent, and I was teetering on the edge of anxiety and exhilaration. I had effectively declared war on my wife, and now I had to wait for the fallout. I got up, forced myself to shower, and tried to go through my usual morning routine, but every mundane task felt like a chore. My mind was racing. What would Sarah say? Would I have to deal with her manipulations? I was still in a daze when I heard the front door slam. Sarah came in, her face a mixture of confusion and irritation, clearly sensing that something was off. "What's going on? Why do you look like you've seen a ghost?" she asked, trying to feign innocence. I could barely look her in the eye. I was about to completely shatter her world, yet I felt a pang of guilt. "I think you know what's going on," I replied coolly, staying composed. "What do you mean?" she shot back, crossing her arms as she leaned against the kitchen counter. "Are you mad at me because I didn't pick up the groceries? You know I've had a crazy week." Her excuses, her lies, they were all wearing thin. You think this is about groceries? I snapped. No, Sarah, it's about your affair. You've been lying to me and I can't take it anymore. The anger in her eyes was palpable, but then something shifted. I could see that she was trying to calculate her next words, trying to manipulate the situation. You're just going to throw all of this at me. You're going to ruin my life, she exclaimed, her voice rising. What were you hoping to accomplish with that email? This is insane. I'm not the one who ruined anything, Sarah. You did that all on your own, I shot back. You've been having an affair with Tyler's teacher and you think that's okay. You think I'd just sit back and do nothing. She stepped closer to me, her eyes narrowing. You don't understand what you're doing. You're going to destroy everything. You're destroying us. I'll lose my job and maybe that's exactly what you deserve. I interrupted, my voice steady. The words felt powerful, like a hammer striking the anvil. I could see the realization dawning on her that I wasn't bluffing. Fine, if you want to play that game, go ahead, she shouted, her bravado faltering. But I will fight back. You think you can just ruin my life and walk away unscathed? You don't know how far I'm willing to go. Her threats no longer scared me. They emboldened me. You'll get what you deserve, Sarah. You've made your choices, now you'll learn the consequences. With that, I turned and walked out, leaving her seething in the kitchen. This was just the beginning, and I was ready for the chaos to unfold. The next few days were a whirlwind. I was on edge, waiting for her to retaliate, but deep down, I knew she was cornered. The school board was likely reviewing the evidence I had submitted. It had to be done. She couldn't continue to hide behind her lies. When the phone rang, I nearly jumped out of my skin. It was the school. I answered, my voice steady but my heart racing. Hello, Mr. Thompson, we received an email from your wife's husband regarding inappropriate conduct involving Ms. Roberts. We need to speak with you about this matter. The voice on the other end said, crisp and professional. I took a deep breath. Yes, of course, I'm available whenever you need. I had to maintain my composure. This was the moment I had been waiting for. It felt surreal. We set up a meeting for later that week. In the meantime, I watched as Sarah tried to act like nothing was wrong, but I could see the cracks forming in her facade. She was distracted at home, constantly checking her phone and pacing around the house. I knew she was waiting for news, waiting for something to change. On the day of the meeting, I arrived at the school, my heart pounding. I was filled with a mix of dread and anticipation. I was about to face the consequences of my actions, but I felt ready. I had to see this through. The meeting room was small, and as I entered, I saw members of the school board and, to my surprise, Ms. Roberts, sitting there looking uneasy. When I spotted Sarah, her face turned pale as she walked in behind me. She hadn't expected to see me there, and I relished the look of shock on her face. Thank you for coming, Mr. Thompson. We've received some very serious allegations. One of the board members began. We want to discuss the evidence you provided. As I sat down, I locked eyes with Sarah. She was trying to project confidence, but I could see the panic just beneath the surface. It was time for the truth to come out. Let's start with the messages, I said, pulling out my phone, ready to present what I had discovered. I could sense Sarah's tension rising as I began to read her own words back to her. Each line was a dagger, peeling away the layers of deceit she had wrapped herself in. Sarah, you think you can just walk away from this without consequence? I asked, my voice steady. I loved you. I trusted you. You've betrayed everyone you claim to care about. The look of realization in her eyes was almost satisfying. I could see her scrambling to find words. But there was nothing left to say. The meeting was a whirlwind of emotions, and I felt like I was finally taking control of my life again. As the board members listened to my account and reviewed the evidence, I felt like I was finally breaking free from the shackles of betrayal. The truth was out, and it was liberating. I was no longer the passive husband watching my marriage crumble. I was fighting back, and it felt incredible. But as the meeting continued, I also began to wonder what my life would look like after this. Would I really be able to move on, or was I opening a Pandora's box that would change everything forever? I knew I had to be prepared for the aftermath of this confrontation, no matter how painful it might be. The meeting with the school board was a turning point, but it was just the beginning of a tumultuous journey. After laying bare Sarah's infidelity, I watched as the board deliberated, their expressions shifting from shock to concern. Each passing minute felt like a lifetime, the weight of the moment heavy on my shoulders. I was filled with a mix of satisfaction and dread. I had exposed her, but now what? Mr. Thompson, this is a serious matter. One of the board members finally spoke, their voice tinged with professionalism. We will conduct a thorough investigation into these allegations. In the meantime, we must suspend Ms. Roberts pending the outcome. We take matters of this nature very seriously. I turned to Sarah, who was sitting in a chair across the room, her face pale and her eyes wide with disbelief. The realization of what was happening was slowly sinking in, and I felt a sense of vindication. She had been so caught up in her lies, and now the truth was unraveling before her eyes. "I can't believe you did this," she whispered, her voice shaky. But I wasn't here to comfort her. I was here to ensure she faced the consequences of her actions. "You brought this on yourself, Sarah," I replied, my voice firm. "You thought you could play with people's lives and get away with it, but you were wrong." As the meeting wrapped up, I walked out of the school feeling a mixture of triumph and apprehension. I had no idea how Sarah would respond to this humiliation, but I knew it wouldn't end well. She was cornered, and cornered animals could be dangerous. When I got home, the atmosphere was tense. Sarah was still in shock, her face a mask of anger and disbelief. "You did this for what? To ruin my career," she spat. "You think this is going to make you feel better? You're just as much to blame." I scoffed. "I'm to blame. You destroyed our marriage, our family, and you think I'm responsible for your actions. You were the one who chose to betray me. Maybe I wouldn't have done it if you weren't so boring." She shot back, her voice rising. "You don't even know how to keep a relationship exciting anymore. It's like you gave up." Her words cut deep, but I wasn't going to let her turn this back on me. "You don't get to twist this around, Sarah. You made your choices, and now you have to live with them." The confrontation escalated, her anger spilling over into tears as she attempted to plead her case. "I didn't mean for it to happen. I thought it was just harmless flirting. I never meant to hurt you." Her voice trailed off, and for a moment I thought I saw a flicker of remorse, but it vanished just as quickly, replaced by her defensive shell. "Harmless? You've ruined everything. You don't get to play the victim here," I retorted. "You had an affair. You were reckless, and now you'll face the end of your career." As I spoke, I could feel a sense of power coursing through me. I had taken the reins of my life back. But still, the reality of what lay ahead began to dawn on me. How would I pick up the pieces? What would our family dynamics look like now? In the days that followed, the investigation unfolded, and the tension in the air only intensified. Sarah avoided talking to me unless she had to, and when she did, it was filled with accusations and anger. The guilt I thought I'd feel for exposing her was overshadowed by the relief that came with the knowledge that I was no longer a passive participant in my own life. But then I received an unexpected call. It was Tyler's mother, a close friend of Sarah's and someone I had known for years. She was distraught and wanted to meet. I agreed, knowing she would likely be affected by the fallout of Sarah's actions. When we met, I could see the worry etched on her face. "I heard about what happened with Sarah," she said, her voice low. "Is it true? Did she really have an affair with Tyler's teacher?" I nodded, feeling a lump form in my throat. "It's true. It's been devastating for our family." Her eyes softened with sympathy. "I'm so sorry, but I need to ask, what are you going to do? How will this affect Tyler?" That question hit me hard. I hadn't fully processed the impact this would have on my nephew. He adored Sarah, and now the very foundation of his world would shake because of her choices. "I don't know," I admitted, my voice shaky. "I just want to protect him from this mess. He doesn't deserve any of this." "You might want to consider having a conversation with him," she suggested gently. "He deserves to hear the truth from you, not from rumors or gossip." Her words lingered in my mind. As I left the meeting, I had been so focused on my revenge that I hadn't truly considered how this would affect Tyler. He was just a kid, innocent and unaware of the adult chaos happening around him. That evening, I sat down to talk with Tyler. I knew I had to be honest, but I also needed to be cautious. I didn't want to shatter his world or paint Sarah as the monster she had become in my eyes. "Hey, buddy," I said gently as I found him playing video games in the living room. "Can we talk for a minute?" He looked up, curiosity in his eyes. "Sure, Uncle Mike, what's up?" I took a deep breath, trying to find the right words. "You know how sometimes adults don't make the best choices?" I started, gauging his reaction. "Yeah, I guess," he replied, his brow furrowed in confusion. "Sarah, she made some choices that weren't right. She's in a bit of trouble right now, and it's important for you to know that this isn't your fault." His expression shifted to one of concern. "What do you mean? What happened?" I hesitated, trying to find the balance between honesty and protecting him. "She's going through something, and it's caused some problems with her job and with us. I just want you to know that we can get through this together." Tyler looked down, his little brow furrowing as he processed my words. "Is she going to be okay?" he asked quietly. I wanted to say yes, but the truth was complicated. "I don't know, buddy, but I promise I'll always be here for you, no matter what happens." As we sat in silence, I realized that I was now navigating a new territory, a territory filled with uncertainty and pain. I had sought revenge, but I was now faced with the aftermath of those choices. I needed to pick up the pieces for both myself and for Tyler. The road ahead was unclear, but I was determined to face it. I had fought back, and now it was time to rebuild. In the days following my conversation with Tyler, the reality of the situation began to settle in. I was in the thick of it now, and while the thrill of revenge had felt empowering, the aftermath was proving to be a much more complex and painful experience. I had unleashed a storm, and now I had to navigate the wreckage. Sarah was still at home, but the atmosphere was thick with tension. She seemed to alternate between anger and despair. Some days she would lash out at me, demanding to know how I could do this to her career, while on others she would sit silently, lost in her own thoughts. The facade she had maintained was crumbling, and I could see hints of vulnerability beneath her bravado. Part of me felt a twinge of pity, but it was quickly overshadowed by the hurt she had caused. One evening, as I walked into the living room, I found Sarah sitting on the couch, her eyes red and puffy from crying. It was an unusual moment of vulnerability, and I hesitated before approaching her. "Are you okay?" I asked, genuinely concerned despite everything that had happened. She looked up, surprise etched across her face. "Do you really care?" she snapped, her tone harsh even in her sorrow. "You ruined me, Mike. I had a career that I loved, and you just threw it all away." I took a deep breath, trying to keep my emotions in check. "You did that to yourself, Sarah. I didn't force you to cheat. You chose that path." I noticed the way her expression shifted from anger to regret. For a brief moment, it looked like she wanted to apologize, but she quickly masked it behind her defenses. "It wasn't supposed to happen like this," she said, her voice trembling. "I didn't mean to hurt you. I just got caught up in everything." "Caught up in everything," I scoffed. "You had an affair. You crossed a line that you can't uncross. You know that, right?" "I know," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "But I didn't think it would come to this. I didn't think you'd take it this far." The vulnerability in her tone struck a chord within me. I was still angry, still hurt, but I also knew that she was frightened. The consequences of her actions were crashing down around her, and perhaps, for the first time, she was realizing the gravity of her betrayal. "Maybe if you had been open about your feelings instead of running to someone else, we wouldn't be here," I replied, softer this time. "But you chose to lie and betray me. You have to own that." She looked down, her hands shaking slightly. "I don't know what to do now, Mike. I can't lose everything. I don't want to lose you." The admission hung heavy in the air. I had spent so long wanting to punish her, to take back control, and yet here she was, showing a glimpse of remorse. It was frustrating and confusing. Did I want to forgive her? Could I ever trust her again? "I don't know if this can be fixed," I admitted, feeling the weight of the moment. "You've broken something that's hard to rebuild, but if you want to try, it has to start with honesty. No more lies." She nodded, tears streaming down her face. "I'll do whatever it takes. I just don't want to lose you." The path forward was murky, but for the first time there was a small flicker of hope. Maybe we could find some way to move past this. But it wouldn't be easy, and I had to be prepared for the reality that things might never return to how they once were. Over the next few weeks, life felt like a balancing act. Sarah and I began to have deeper conversations, painful, raw discussions about what had happened and why. We both acknowledged the cracks in our marriage that had allowed her to stray. I learned about her feelings of loneliness and dissatisfaction, while she started to grasp the pain she had inflicted on me and our family. We started seeing a marriage counselor, which was a step I had hesitated to take previously. The sessions were exhausting, plenty of tears and confrontations, but we were also beginning to open up. It was like peeling back layers of an onion. Each layer revealed more about what had led us to this point. Meanwhile, the school board's investigation dragged on. I felt a sense of dread every time I received an email or a phone call. Sarah's career was on the line, and while I had wanted to expose her, the idea of losing her job entirely weighed heavily on me. I struggled with conflicting feelings. While I wanted her to face the consequences, I also didn't want to see her completely destroyed. One day, during a counseling session, Sarah broke down and admitted something that jolted me. I realized now that I was trying to escape. I thought I was unhappy, but what I really wanted was to feel wanted again. I thought I could find that with someone else. I was so wrong. It's not just about the affair, is it? I probed gently, trying to grasp her perspective. It's about what led you to that point. Yes, she nodded, wiping her tears. I never meant to hurt you, but I didn't know how to talk to you about my feelings. I was ashamed, and instead of being honest, I chose to run away. I thought I could find happiness elsewhere. Hearing her speak so candidly opened a door that had long been closed. It was hard to see the woman I once loved so broken, but I was beginning to understand that healing required vulnerability on both sides. If I wanted to rebuild our relationship, I had to let go of the anger that had fueled my desire for revenge. As weeks turned into months, we began to navigate our new reality. There were still moments of tension and pain, but we were slowly rebuilding trust. I found myself appreciating the small changes in Sarah, the way she would reach for my hand during dinner, the way she would look me in the eye when she spoke. It was a long and arduous journey, but we were moving forward. Then came the day of the school board's decision regarding Sarah's fate. I sat in a small meeting room with her at the school, the air thick with anticipation. I felt nervous for her, a stark contrast from the vindictive feelings I had harbored just months before. The board members entered, their expressions serious. Ms. Roberts, after reviewing the evidence and your statements, we have come to a decision regarding your employment. One of them began. I reached for Sarah's hand, squeezing it tightly. Whatever the outcome, we would face it together. If you agree to undergo counseling and participate in a mentorship program for educators, we will allow you to keep your position, but you will be on probation for 1 year. The relief that washed over Sarah was palpable, and I felt a surge of unexpected happiness for her. "Thank you," she whispered, tears of joy spilling down her cheeks. As we left the meeting, I realized that while the road ahead was still uncertain, we were beginning to find our way back to each other. And perhaps, just perhaps, we could emerge from this stronger than before. The journey to rebuilding trust would take time, but for the first time in a long while, I felt a sense of hope. We were moving forward, one step at a time. The following months were a whirlwind of change, healing, and relentless work. Sarah and I were navigating uncharted territory, and while the scars of betrayal were still fresh, we were committed to rebuilding what had been shattered. I often found myself reflecting on the journey we had taken, how the desire for revenge had morphed into a quest for understanding and forgiveness. With Sarah on probation at the school, she was determined to prove herself. She threw herself into her work and embraced the mentorship program with a fierceness I hadn't seen in her before. The change was remarkable. Gone was the woman who had hidden behind flirtations and deceit. In her place was someone earnest about her mistakes and eager to move forward. She began to take her role as a teacher seriously, focusing on the impact she could have on her students. At home, we established new routines. We made it a point to spend quality time together, whether it was cooking dinner, going for walks, or just sitting and talking about our days. The conversations were sometimes awkward and filled with tension, but they were also filled with a newfound honesty. I could see Sarah working to regain my trust, and in return, I was committed to not letting the past define us. One evening, as we sat on the couch watching a movie, I reached for her hand and intertwined our fingers. "You know, I've been thinking," I said, turning to her. "We've come a long way. I never thought we'd make it through this." "I didn't either," she admitted, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. but I want to keep working at it. I want us to be okay again, even if it takes time." "I do too," I replied, feeling a warmth flood through me. "But we can't keep sweeping things under the rug. We have to keep being honest, even when it's uncomfortable." She nodded in agreement, and in that moment, I realized how far we had both come. It was a delicate balance, but we were both committed to healing and moving forward. Around this time, we also decided to make a change in our living situation. The house felt heavy with the memories of betrayal and hurt, so we sold it and moved into a smaller place that felt fresh and new. It was a symbolic move, and each box we packed and unpacked felt like a step toward a new beginning. This new environment allowed us to start anew, without the shadows of our past looming over us. As we settled into our new home, I could see the changes in Sarah. She seemed lighter, more genuine, and truly committed to her growth. And while I had initially wanted revenge for my own pain, I began to realize that forgiveness was a far more powerful force. It was about freeing myself from the shackles of anger and resentment. As the months went by, Sarah's probation at work came to an end, and she was officially reinstated as a permanent teacher at the school. The news brought a flood of relief, not only for her but for both of us. We celebrated the milestone with dinner at a favorite restaurant, allowing ourselves to bask in the joy of overcoming a significant hurdle together. "Here, to new beginnings," she said, raising her glass with a smile. "To new beginnings," I echoed, feeling a sense of hope I hadn't thought possible just months before. Through counseling and open communication, we learned to navigate our relationship with a deeper understanding. I discovered that confronting our issues head-on, rather than burying them, was the key to our healing. With every honest discussion, we peeled back the layers of our marriage, uncovering not just the wounds but also the love that had been there all along. One evening, as we sat together reminiscing about our journey, Sarah turned to me with a serious expression. "I've been thinking about how much we've been through. You could have chosen to walk away, but you didn't. You chose to fight for us." I felt like there was still something worth saving, I said, my heart swelling. But it took a long time for me to realize that forgiveness was the real fight. It was the only way to heal. Her eyes softened, and in that moment we both understood that our marriage had transformed. We had transcended beyond just being husband and wife. We had become partners in healing. As time passed, I learned to trust Sarah again, and she demonstrated time and again that she was dedicated to our relationship. We laughed together, supported each other through challenges, and slowly built a new foundation for our marriage, one rooted in honesty, vulnerability, and mutual respect. Reflecting on the wild journey that had led us here, I realized something important. While betrayal had brought us to the brink of destruction, it also provided an opportunity for profound growth. Life threw us a curveball, but we turned it into a lesson about resilience and the power of love. As I look back on that chaotic time, I feel a mix of emotions: anger, sadness, but ultimately gratitude. I learned that relationships require hard work, honesty, and a willingness to forgive. To anyone facing similar struggles, I would say this: don't shy away from the pain. Confront it, learn from it, and be open to the possibility of healing, even when it seems impossible. Life is messy, relationships are complicated, but with patience, understanding, and love, it is possible to emerge stronger than before. I don't know what the future holds for Sarah and me, but I do know one thing: we're in this together, and together we can face anything that comes our way.